Okay, we have 4 fantastic people here. We're talking about digital advocacy, and we're going to twist this up a little bit to talk about the pluses, some of the good things that have been achieved by digital advocacy, and also some of the either shortcomings or maybe where there's some of the gaps, weaknesses of this kind of tool, this kind of approach. So just really quickly, actually, each of them has a very short presentation they're going to share, but in a couple minutes. So what I wanted to start off really quickly about with these folks is one, to do a super short intro of themselves and their name, the project, the main project they work on, and either to answer this question of what has been a great example of a success of using digital advocacy, or perhaps a failure, or something really quick about where there was a big gap in it that you guys witnessed, either with your own work or in the communities where you work. So let's just start right here. This is Nadine.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, shall I start?
So very quick intro, not with your presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that'll come in a minute. But just quick intro of your name and your project, and also some great success or some great kind of gap.
So my name is Nadine Marwood. I'm an activist based here in Beirut, and I work on a range of issues and campaigns. So I'm a digital kind of person by total coincidence. I'm not a professional, but I use the internet a lot. My main organization is called Nasawiya. It's a feminist collective working on gender justice. Thank you.
Seems you have some fans here.
We weren't popular 3 years ago. I don't know what happened, but I think it was Twitter, actually. I also work on a political campaign called Take Back Parliament, which is planning to nominate new, young, independent, fresh candidates for the upcoming elections, if we have elections, we're not sure. And so I think, I've put some slides. I can talk about the successful things that have happened.
So how about a gap then? What's something where you saw people try to use digital advocacy and it just didn't work?
Well, there's all sorts of examples. I think, and very recently, I'll give you an example about the Zawej Madani issue, the civil marriage that became a very hot topic recently. So a long time ago, we put up a tent in front of Parliament, and we were having shifts, and we used to tweet, civil marriage, all day long. Nobody cared at all. We tweeted information. We tried to get people to visit the tent. Nobody came to the tent. I sat there alone many nights. And we tried to get people excited about it. Didn't work. And then what happened is, very recently, you remember when Nidal and Khulud got married civilly, suddenly Twitter went crazy, right? You remember it was all like pro-civil marriage, against civil marriage, etc. So I think one of the key factors we see from there is the timeliness. If you're trying to do a campaign and nobody's listening anyway, and there's no wave to ride, then most probably it will fail. It's very difficult to get something from scratch out there.
So using it to kind of build on a trend that is growing, but starting from scratch or raw can be very difficult.
Getting people's attention from scratch is really, really difficult. I think when the more successful campaigns are when there's a wave already, and you sort of get on board the wave and try to package it to get your message across. That's easier, a lot easier.
All right. Next to Nadine, we have Abba. Can you tell us quickly about your project in Egypt, and maybe a great success or a great failure of digital advocacy in Egypt?
Okay, so I'll speak a bit more about HerasMap a bit later. So just very quickly, my name is Iba Tamami. I'm the Marketing and Communications Unit Head for HerasMap. HerasMap is an independent initiative working on ending the social acceptability of sexual harassment in Egypt. One of the digital tools that we use is basically we crowdsource sexual harassment reports, harassment that happens to people or whether they witness it, and they send us reports through SMS or online. And so that's one of our digital legs. And a huge success of this, in my opinion, is that when we started in 2010, we were the first independent initiative to ever work on sexual harassment in Egypt, and there is so much shame and taboo attached to the topic. So there is very, very little dialogue on the issue. Whereas today, and I do not attribute this change to HerasMap only, but today there is a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of conversation on the issue, and it's now at least brought up to the public eyes, and people, there's a lot of discussion going on, and obviously to address an issue you need to identify it first, and this is really happening these days. Limitation is obviously reach. 20%, in Egypt, internet penetration is around 20% right now, and mobile penetration is about 110%, and that's why we use SMS and not necessarily focusing only on mobile apps, for instance. But at the end of the day, if we were to depend only on digital channels, we would not be able to reach a population of 83 million people. And we would not be able to change perceptions and ultimately change behavior, because we're trying to change the social acceptability of sexual harassment. So we need to change behavior across an entire society. Whereas when we appeared in, for example, the Bassem Youssef show last Friday, which is like a show that on TV that's viewed by 30 million and has a very popular YouTube channel, that drove a lot of traffic to our social media assets, our social media channels, and created a dialogue online that was actually triggered through an offline channel. So definitely integration is key, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later.
All right, cool. Next at Iba, we have Ramzi from Visualizing Palestine. So same questions. So just quick intro, and a great success or a great failure, maybe in Palestine, from digital advocacy efforts.
Okay, so my name is Ramzi Jaber. I engineer by background, but I organized TEDx Ramallah 2 years ago. Now, along with a wonderful team, 2 of them are here somewhere. I hope they're here. They better be here. Okay, there we go. Yes. Thank God. Good. Sorry. So what we do is we take data and statistics and create visual stories, and I think we'll show that some of them later. A great success. I mean, as I think Dalia in the previous panel mentioned, we don't have 3G, so it's not that we don't tweet as much as Egyptians do, and maybe we should. So I think one way is Palestinians and Arabs in general have been dehumanized in the media. If you look at the media, traditional media, mainstream media, it's only of violence and conflict. And I think a lot of the alternative media have actually pointed to things that have humanized them, and as Iba said, change perception, and that's the only way things. I have a few examples of how a success, and maybe I'll show that on the slide. So maybe let's continue.
All right, last up we have Amr from Pushbots and from Morsi Meter.
Yeah, it's quite confusing to be here on the stage for 2 different reasons. I kind of have a very different and mixed background. So I'm a pharmacist by education, an entrepreneur by profession, and a writer by passion. So basically, I care about 2 main things, even in my startup, so even in the social spectrum and even in the professional one, which is the information accessibility and use. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is good governance. So these are the main things I do care about, and most of the projects I carry on are kind of around that. In 2011, just after the revolution, we started the first crowdsourced reporting platform in Egypt. It was not kind of exclusively for sexual harassment, but it was kind of trying to fight everything, which didn't work, obviously. But yeah, that was one of the main focuses, which is information availability. We have seen people talking to each other after the revolution in a very personal way, and peer-to-peer information started to be the most reliable source of information after the revolution started. So we started a project around that, and then later on in 2012, after the naming of the new president of Egypt, Mohamed Morsi, we have started the first, let's say, attempt to become a watchdog for the 100 days program progress, which was called the Morsi Meter, which has huge buzz in the Middle East.
Great.
Yeah.
Look, let me ask the audience here a second, and hold up your hands. How many people here, have you ever signed any sort of online petition, done anything that you could somehow categorize as online activism, online advocacy, etc.? Ever? All right, so keep them up. Now, keep your hands up if you feel confident that those actions that you did had real impact on the ground and changing some issue. Okay, so about half of the people who did something online felt like it had real impact. I mean, how do you guys measure your success of this engagement? How can we get this 50% to be 100%? What are some ways to increase the impact of digital advocacy? Who wants to?
Yeah, I can hop on. So I think one of the main things you should focus on is not to try to reach everyone. This is not going to happen. And if you try to solve all sort of problems, and if you try to address all sort of people, you'll end up not just moving anywhere in the direction. So for example, one of the main critiques we have had in the Morsi meter, for example, when we started in Egypt, that yes, probably this is not expressing the opinion of every single Egyptian, because from the first moment we are kind of biased to the people who have access to computers, who knows the website and who can just go online. But I think that this is pretty much fine. It's okay. We have now 30% penetration. If you just can address those 30% of population and get them to engage and get them to understand and get them to be more positive, that is absolutely fine. You don't have to maximize the reach to become 100%, but you just have to work on within your scope, and that's just absolutely fine.
Okay, look, quickly, Ibat, could you set up your presentation here quickly? And there's a thing here. In the meanwhile, I want to quickly ask the audience if someone who raised their hand that they have taken part in some sort of digital advocacy could quickly say what you think is something that can push a campaign from something that is just getting people online to do something that is basically superficial, or something that has an impact. What is a difference there between those two kinds of engagements? There's a microphone here, I think. There's a hand one over here.
Hi. I think for it to have an impact, it should be followed by offline at least movement, like at least a 360-degree impact.
So really tying the online to the offline. But what about this lady here? She seemed very enthusiastic to raise her hand.
Hi. I think something to keep in mind is that when you're going to advocate for an idea, you're really marketing an idea. And if you follow marketing rules or marketing practices, you might actually get to the critical mass of acceptance. And if you look at books like The Tipping Point, where you look at the acceptance of ideas or brands or products, there is always that middle point where something goes from being an idea or a product goes from being a marginal element where you have the early adopters until you get to have those early adopters move into the general masses, and then you hit the critical mass. And what you need to do is look for the influencers and look for people who are able to do that for you, and then you would go up in terms of acceptance.
So taking some real solid lessons from the normal for-profit marketing world.
Absolutely,
and
it's
how
marketing.
those can apply to activism.
You're marketing an idea, that's it.
All right, so now we're going to do some super quick intros from each of these projects. They have 3 minutes, really quick visual overview, because there's some fantastic lessons we can learn from them. And Ibat is going to start up here. Yeah. 3 minutes.
Okay, really quickly. So thanks for bringing the point up of marketing. Actually, my background is in marketing. I worked on the commercial side of marketing for a very long time until I joined HerasMap. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. Who are we as HerasMap? We're an independent initiative that started up in 2010 to end the social acceptability of sexual harassment in Egypt. Why? Because in 2008, a study was done that tells us that 83% of Egyptian women surveyed had been subjected to sexual harassment, 50% of them on a daily basis. 72% of them were veiled and monaqabat, so head-to-toe veil, because there are a lot of excuses about what women wear that leads to sexual harassment. And around 63% of men surveyed in the survey admitted to sexually harassing, very openly. And so we realized that there is an issue. There's a real issue that sexual harassment is considered quite socially acceptable. So what did we do about this? We used digital tools and offline mobilization efforts to really try to address this, and we're still working hard at it. So we started something called the HerasMap. It's a crowdsourced platform that allows us to gather reports of sexual harassment from anywhere in the country through online. So our website, we have a web form, Facebook, Twitter, or through SMS. And basically, because we have 110% mobile penetration, SMS really allows us to reach a lot of people that do not necessarily go online. When we get these reports, we don't just map them and tell people where the hotspots are, contrary to stereotypes, or tell women where to go and where not to go. That is not our role. What we tell them, what we use this for, is we actually create campaigns to dispel all the stereotypes and myths and excuses for sexual harassment. So no, it doesn't only happen to the non-veiled or whatever woman's wearing. Sexual harassers are not just poor or uneducated. Sexual harassment doesn't just happen in the cities and not in the rural areas, and so on and so forth. We have data that allows us to actually counter all the stereotypes, to actually break the silence, because like I said, there's a lot of shame and taboo attached to the topic. So when you can report anonymously, you can really break a lot of barriers. And we take these reports and we go to the streets. We have 500 volunteers all over Egypt, divided into their own neighborhoods. People go into their own neighborhoods only and speak to doormen, so the influencers, doormen, shopkeepers, kiosk owners, people with a permanent presence in the street, people who have the ability to create the culture of that street, right? They can be harassers themselves, and they tend to be, or they can be people who stand up to harassment just like they would in Egypt if there was an act of theft, for example. If I walk down the street and I call out harami, harami, these doormen and shop owners and kiosk owners and people in the street would probably chase this guy down and help me take them to the police or whatever. Whereas if I'm in the same situation at the same time of day, walking in the same street, and I call out harasser, I do not get the same reaction and response. So this is what we want to change. We want to change people from being passive or negatively active towards sexual harassment when they see it happen, to actually being positive and to actually being active in stopping harassment when they see it happen. It could be from a look, it could be from a word, it could be from an action, but just basically treat it like the crime that it is. The 500 volunteers go into Egypt, into their own neighborhoods. They take the maps with them, the reports with them, and they convince people that harassment happens in their very own neighborhoods and that it happens all over Egypt. They respond to all of the stereotypical excuses. They let these people, say all the reasons why harassment is okay and why it's the woman's fault and whatnot, and they respond to all of that. And then ultimately, they convince people to stand up to harassment by putting up a sticker on their shop that says that this is a harassment-free zone. What this means is that if harassment happens in their area, they will actually stand up to it. And this concept we're taking nationwide, and we're going to have a huge through-the-line campaign later on this year to actually engage more people. And the reports actually allow us to convince people that harassment does in fact happen in that very street or in that very neighborhood. When they read the reports verbatim, they realize that it's very true, and in fact it really shocks people and gets them to act. So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ibat. Hey, Ramzi, you want to get set up here?
Sure.
And meanwhile, I want to ask Amr a quick question. Both Ibat and Amr work in Egypt, where there are some of these issues of internet penetration, smartphone penetration, etc. How do you guys deal with this issue of trying to engage as many people as possible in this, in an environment where there's this kind of challenge?
Right. Well, when it comes to crowdsourcing, I think that the main problem is not in getting people to engage, because that happens. You get a lot of excited people. They use your service, whatever you're providing. But the real challenge is, how do you sustain their activity? Because without a reward mechanism, without an incentive, you're just going to slip away from your system, and you just have to go for the cost of getting other people interested. So the whole missing component in crowdsourcing in developing countries is the reward kind of mechanism, because again, these are all channels of information, aggregating information. Without using this information to generate a proper action, you're just going to be generating a lot of effort into getting people onto the platform, and then let's say they're going to be excited for the first couple of weeks, but then they're just going to decline, their users going to decline so much. That's the whole main issue. The key is how to find a good incentive and a reward mechanism so that people actually in the street take their mobile phones, do something, That's the whole hukam.
All right, cool.
Sure, sir.
Ramzi Jaber from Visualizing Palestine, taking the stage.
How many of you have heard of what is administrative detention? The Palestinian in the crowd. أسرة إدارية بالعربي. Okay, two. So administrative detention is probably one of the more traumatic experiences. It means people have been, if you put in jail without knowing why. It's secret evidence. Neither you, nor your lawyers, nor your family know why you're in jail. So this happened and it's been happening to Palestinians since 1967. Tens of thousands, upon hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, equivalent to 40% of the Palestinian population are political prisoners. So last year, one Palestinian said, no, I refuse this affront to dignity, and I'm going to go on a hunger strike. So this one person actually went on a hunger strike, and nobody cared. There was no international media at all, until a few people, youth, actually started the Dying to Live campaign. It's not only these. And it's not only online. A lot of it was offline. A friend of mine, actually, Lena, actually told me she spent 3 days without food just to see, feel what it was. These people actually rallied offline, went to, protest, went online. And their very first media mention was 52 days in jail. 52 days, imagine that. Imagine you're in jail in hunger strike for 50 days without food for almost 2 months and nobody writing it. So Jazeera for 52 days. Then it was Reuters for 59 days talking about it. After 62 days, New York Times mentioned it. On the same day, CNN did a brilliant interview. And on the 66th day, this hunger striker actually was court set free. Where do we come in? We take data and statistics and create visual stories based for social justice. For Khadr Adnan, who was a person, we downloaded 21 medical reports of the physiological effects of total volunteer fast. What happens to your body when you go on a hunger strike? And these people actually started using them. People on social media, people in traditional media start using it to advocate, to say this injustice. And as across, so we started, I'll just go quickly through some of the other ones we've done. So we scraped a bus map of the Israeli website showing all the bus routes to the settlements from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is where I was born and I can't get there. So all these routes there, I can't get on them because of my ethnicity. This is house demolitions. Since 1967, over 25,000 homes have been demolished. It's used as a way of moving people out of another place. This is released yesterday, actually. This is showing that even though Ramallah has more rainfall than London, we get a third of what British people or what settlers in Israel do. And we explain why. Recently, we did a campaign targeted towards U.S. citizens that told them to invest in their future and what they can do for $30 billion of their money. They can put 40,000 homes in D.C. as opposed to demolishing 25,000 homes in Palestine. This actually went to offline. So we actually went on metro and billboards in metro stations throughout D.C. and mobile trucks. A lot of people started covering it. It was also in print publications, and it was published in 7 languages. People around the world came and said, "We love what you do. We want to translate it in our own languages." So it was in Korean, French, Chinese, Finnish, and Spanish. And no surprise, I think the Koreans were the fastest translators till today. I don't know why. So this is a person, Ziad. I highlighted him up there. He works in Ramallah, and he goes to Gaza, and he printed 3,000 copies of the things to give out to journalists as they come to Gaza to explain what is happening. I'm going to end with this quote, Munana Shashibi. She sent this, and I found this so heartwarming. She said, "It's so invigorating to watch our new generations who constantly continue to prove Golda Meir's wishful thinking that the old will die and the young will forget." And it's a stupid and wrong quote. And on that note, I'm going to leave. But one thing, I just want to thank Hani and Chris here, who helped me a lot with the visuals. He was brilliant people. So thank you.
So just quick, what are some ways to make digital advocacy much more impactful on the ground, actually having real impact? Anyone here in the audience have an idea, suggestion, brief thought? How can we make this stuff rock? Is that a hand in the back? We'll come back to you in a bit. Yeah, let's get this lady here in the back here. Yeah, in the back. Yeah. We want this stuff to be transformational, high impact. What are we missing? What should we try? What should we do?
Hi, this was a trick. I don't have an idea. I just want to ask a question for the harassed girl, please. May I?
No. We want something transformational here. Here in the front. We'll come to questions in a little bit.
May I ask her later, please?
Yes, you may.
Hey, I think what you're all doing is amazing. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that in some cases, for example, like HerasMap, you need to complement the sort of cyberspace with what I'd like to call meat space or reality. But in cases of, or projects like Visualizing Palestine, is there really a need to go to the, like, actually go out on the streets? The whole reason behind Visualizing Palestine is representing or presenting the information in a visual aspect. And it's basically telling the story. So does it really need to be complemented on the ground? So I guess, I mean, what I'm trying to say is basically, it's sort of a question, rhetorical question maybe, but it's basically like, you have to figure out who your target audience is first and what you're trying to say, what your message is, and then try to figure out if it needs to be complemented on the ground or not.
So I think what Dina Sharif said in the old panel was that inclusivity is key. And this is what we're trying to do, is we work with grassroots initiatives and organizations that are working on the ground already. We don't want to replicate, we don't want to do everything. And this is, so we create visual tools for them to work. So those young activists who were trying to free somebody, including yourself, of course, you, yeah. Go ahead, Iba.
No, once you're done.
Iba, you have a response?
Yeah, I have an opinion. Someone was talking earlier about, setting marketing targets, and marketing strategy with set marketing targets. And I think that's really, really key. I think, personally, our intention is to be transformational, absolutely. We're not modest in our ambition at all. And we do intend to end the social acceptability of sexual harassment, which is a really big deal. You're talking about perception and therefore behavior change across an entire nation, and we plan to do this. But what I believe is really, really important are two things. In our case, one is to use all the channels available and relevant to what we're trying to do. So we use digital, we use on the ground, and we use above the line, and we try to integrate everything so that we reach the numbers, the critical mass that we're trying to reach in order to reach that tipping point, but at the same time complement it with whatever channels, depending on the traits of that particular channel. Some channels are there for interaction, for conversation. Some channels are there for awareness. Some channel, but awareness across the mass level and whatnot. The other thing is going back to the initial point, is to set really strict targets and to actually constantly gauge progress. So, for example, we're running 2 nationwide campaigns this year that are through the line. Right now, what we're doing is we're doing pre-research. So we're actually going to quantify today what our numbers are on the sexual harassment front, how often does it happen, what kind of harassment, how does the bystander, the average bystander respond and whatnot, and what are the perceptions towards harassment, the harasser, and the harassed. And then we will track this post our campaign, a few months after our campaigns are launched and through, to see the progress. So by setting really hard targets and by gauging this progress, that will constantly put us in the discipline to be able to reach what we're trying to do.
Okay, hold on. One really quick comment here, and then Nadine is going to come up. Her presentation is already set up here. So quick comment.
So I thought what we could do is, what you would need to do is triangulate psychology, politics, and marketing.
You said triangulate?
Yes,
okay.
Somewhere between those three you will find your answer. If you look at psychology, if you want to win people over and you go and you are in an aggressive mode of communication, they will retreat because you are coming from the other side. So you need to
What were
engage.
the three? Triangulate technology,
No. Psychology, political campaigning,
political campaign,
and marketing. Okay, so psychology, you need to engage in a way that does not alienate people who don't agree with you. That is the one. With marketing, you need to bring down your message to an elevator pitch, where if I were, in the elevator with one of these, panelists, and I ask them, what do you do? There needs to be a 2-sentence solution, like a 2-sentence explanation of what they do and why this is important and why we need to fall behind it. This is something which is simple, talking points. People who are not very high on IQ are able to understand and can internalize. And then you look at political campaigning and learn from Obama. He's the best political campaigner. Look what he's done. Look how he managed to win an election that he was supposed to lose because of the economy. And learn from there. Look at political endorsements from celebrities. That is seriously powerful. What if we put Haifa, Nancy, and Elisa in a song singing for women's rights and against abuse of women by their husbands and against rape? What would happen then? Maybe nothing because they're air. Yeah, but there's a lot of potential for celebrity involvement. There's a lot to learn in these disciplines.
So let me ask Nadine about how she triangulates between marketing, political campaigns, and psychology, and what do you think about having Haifa Wahbi as part of your campaigns?
We'll
come back to that.
And then we'll go back to Haifa. So I'm just going to show 5 slides from different campaigns to talk about how the internet has changed in the last year and what we can learn from these changes and what are some of the lessons we can learn for how to make things better. So I started doing graphics, again, by coincidence. I was going through the Lebanese budget and looking at the different items, and I found really interesting things, and I started sharing them on Twitter, but nobody was engaging because it was just so much information. So I thought, okay, let me make a table to show people where their tax money is being spent. And so we put معاشات نواب سابقين, so how much we paid to retired MPs versus like really important things that we should be paying for, education, facilities for people with disabilities, مكب النفايات بصيدا, and the debt that we have for the social security. So this was the first experiment. We put it up on the Nasawiya page, and it got over 400 shares. And it was the first it was about a year ago. So it was the first graphic that told us, okay, people like sharing photos a lot, especially photos that are colorful and have information. And you'll see, this was actually an infographic. This actually constitutes an infographic. The other stuff doesn't really. So people always think that I work on infographics, which I don't. I'm not a designer. I just make easy and simple graphics. And you'll see the difference between this, which took a little bit of research and a little bit of design, and this was 80 shares. And then the one after it, you can see here over 1,000 shares. And this is not, this was a very simple message. It's kind of ugly. There's no color. It just says that Spinneys treats their workers like crap, and we should do something about them. So boycott Spinneys because they don't treat their workers with respect. And this got over 1,000 shares within about a few hours. It even got the CEO of Spinneys, Michael Wright, to respond. So you have his comments here, answering everybody who's commented. يعني دير أحمد, it's not true. بعدين سندير ليلى, you're getting the wrong idea. So he was engaging one by one with everybody commenting and spreading false information, of course. And so what's the difference between this, which looks a lot nicer, and this one? 4 words, 4 letters, sorry. What's the difference?
Simple.
Bulb.
Ball?
Bulb. I'm guessing, I don't know.
No. 4-letter words. What changed the internet so that this was not that popular and then this was super popular?
Simple.
9gag. Yeah?
9gag.
What?
9gag. No?
9gag, it's the website where you
What's
see
it
9gag.
called?
You don't
No,
know
9gag.
Yeah.
9gag.
there we go.
Yeah, okay.
So 9gag, because of 9gag, which is a very interesting social experiment, you had thousands of the ugliest, silliest, badly drawn, مش حتى Photoshop, paint, bitmap images that any person at home could put something online. And 9gag became super, super popular. And you have pages with Lebanese memes that have, I don't know how much, like 1 million followers or likes or something. And Facebook became a place for crap images. And this is what it is today. So when you share things that are simple and small, they don't need that much design, and they get viral like crazy, or photos that are timely. I'll show you another one that's very ugly. Right? Look at this design. It's horrendous. I made it. It's not an infographic. Doesn't have anything special. I stole a photo. I put a few numbers on it. And look at the shares. 1,700 shares, because the Lebanese MPs had given themselves a raise. Yeah? And it went viral very quickly, and the MPs the next day, they said a statement about it. So what I wanted to say with these examples, and this one. شو هي? I don't understand this. 1,500 shares for a falafel photo. For me, I know just Falafel was sharing their success story here, but for me, this doesn't indicate a success story. It indicates, what's wrong with people, 1,500 people using Facebook, that would share a photo about falafel, which is nicely designed and everything, but it's really just a falafel sandwich. How does it get 1,500 shares? I'm not sure. And when you see something like this, what it teaches you, or what it brings to your attention, is that, if 1,500 people will share this, then this 1,700 share isn't that. Sometimes I see commercial advertising in Facebook, and you've got 10,000 likes or 10,000 shares for something like, if you like your mother, share this photo, or like this photo. Yeah, so we're not really, I don't think the question Munir was asking, how do you transform people's interaction from the internet to offline? I personally think that they're two separate worlds, and there's not much of a correlation between them at all. I don't think there's anything that you can see from what we do online that translates into offline. So 1% of people who like your page will do something with it. 1% of people attending your event will show up to the event. And I think it's a myth to think just because we buzzed something online, offline is going to have any sort of correlation. And I can give you a lot of examples about this, especially that people online have sort of a goldfish memory, right? So they forget when the next buzz hits. And people get so angry, especially on Facebook groups. It's the funniest thing. So a Facebook group has a lifespan of 10 days. Tops, I'll end. So a Facebook group will last for 10 days, and it's anything that after 10 days, khalas, nobody will visit the group, the notifications will annoy you. And then people start posting in the group, I'm so angry, people have forgotten the cause. And the answer is yes, they've forgotten the cause. It's a totally different mindset and psychology. The only advantage I would say is that you have online is that you appear in the online world a little bit scarier and a little bit stronger if you have something like 1,000 people sharing you or 10,000 people liking you. It's not so much, and I know I've been saying the opposite for a few years. I've been a big advocate for social media because of it. I'm starting to believe you're playing football here and you're playing basketball somewhere else, and there's not much correlation between them. I'll stop here, and then maybe we can talk.
Thanks, Nadine. Very cool. Thank you, Nadine. So just to clarify, I didn't mean to be asking about translating online action to offline action, but online action to real change. And since most, I think, real change happens in the offline world, how can we make that connection stronger? Just because we're rushing through our time quickly, I want to ask Amr to come up and quickly go through Morsi meter, and then we'll go to Q&A for the audience, and we'll keep the discussion going.
All right. So I will try. I know I'm at the last, so I try to be as concise as possible and not to take so much time. So yeah, it all started as a joke. What happened to be a landmark in digital advocacy started as a pure joke from Abbas, my friend, he sent me an email when I was in Germany, and the subject was pretty interesting. He told me, would you like to be on CNN after 5 days? And I was like, yeah. And he said, okay, I was having a conversation today with one of our friends, Safwat, and he's, you know, the mathematical geek in our team, the kind of person who will fall in love with mathematics and statistics. And he's so kind of, you know, into himself, and he was talking with Abbas, and he said, oh, how would it feel like to have something like the Obama meter in the US? And then they were just drinking tea, and Abbas went home and then sent me that email. And I was, to be honest, I was not that excited when I was in Germany, so I was doing my internship, and I told him, yeah, of course, let's just do it whenever I come from Germany. And so that was 5 days before the presidential results. And then fast forward, the day of announcing the new president, I was in Germany still, listening to the live stream on the internet, waiting for the news every Egyptian is looking for the first free elections in Egypt. And I was so excited that moment when it was announced that this is the result and everyone was happy. I told Abbas, listen, we're doing this today. For a very selfish reason, I had another conference next day. So I was like, I will be out of town for 5 days, so let's do it today. It was very selfish, personal reason, but I think it has contributed to getting this online for that specific day. And then 8 hours later, 1 a.m. in the morning, we had a website. We had the domain booked in the same time. We put it on our servers. We asked someone via the phone to design a quick logo. We established a Facebook page, and very unorganized, very unplanned project. And then I tweeted my first tweet, 1:30 a.m. in the morning, and hey guys, check this out. And then this tweet picks up, and a lot of people insanely on the internet gets retweeted. And there was a specific moment where the growth went out of control. When one of the most famous tweets in Egypt retweeted it, and then our server crashed. We got huge, insane traffic. And what was really inspiring at that moment is that in the same next minute, I've got an offer from someone else to buy us new servers. He sent us a DM and said, hey guys, I like what you're doing. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna buy you servers. And before the first day, the next morning, we had full brand new servers from someone else. And the engagement on the website was beyond imagination. People were trying to say that I can do graphic design, let me try to help you. I can translate the website into English. And by the way, the English version is totally crowdsourced from people. We did not hire anyone. People sent us the translation, and then we got it on the website. So again, what is the Morsi meter? The Morsi meter is, and as I like to define it, is an attempt. I can say it's the most successful one, but it's an attempt to monitor the performance of the first elected president in Egypt. Why this was quite interesting for me is that because the timing, it was from the day one in power. And that is quite not common in the Arabian, let's say, landscape. To monitor a president from the first day, I thought I'm not going to arrive to Egypt again when I've done that. But truth is, I came and nothing happened. So what we're doing is we're trying to provide a visual experience for people, for the average citizen. Anyone who can just log on the internet, from the first 30 seconds of opening a web page, he would understand what is the progress. So we have had 3 meters, one for counting the days and one for the overall achievement. And later on, we added a people's satisfaction kind of bar. So if there are claims that things happen and people have other perception that this is not what it is on real life, they can say that, hey, I'm from this specific area and I don't feel any tangible results. And then we categorize the 5 categories the president committed himself to into a very simple and minimal user interface so people can understand, even visually from the colors, what is the progress. With green, things that happened, orange, things that are kind of in progress, and probably gray, things that never happened and will never happen. So it was 64 promise, 5 categories, and we were monitoring those. And by the end of the 100 days, it was 100 days project, and by the end of the 100 days, we produced a cool report with infographics. And that's why I appreciate all the visuals and all the cool works people are working on, like Ramzi, because we have a very bad problem in the Arab region. We have a lot of data, but we fail at presenting those data. That's also why it was very interesting to present the current data as something visually pleasant for people. So that's all about the website, but let me just give you one final statement about the strategic importance of things like that, in my opinion. So a lot of people would criticize and said, why didn't you guys continue? Or let's say you have only been focusing on the niche of the online people, or whatever kind of comments that you would get. But I think that these kind of initiatives have dramatic effect in changing the mindset of people. You know, because in Egypt, we have a very strong way of taking decisions based on our emotions. So أنا بحبه خلاص. أنا عجبني. هو مرسي وعجبني. Or the other part is أنا مش عجبني وخلاص. So we take these kind of decisions based on just intuition and not numbers and facts. So one of the things that Morsi Mira was doing is trying to slowly change the mindset of people that, hey, you hate him, okay, check it out, maybe you will change your mind. Hey, you love him, okay, check it out, maybe you'll hate him. So we exclusively try to make it as a data tool, non-politicized. We don't have a political statement. We're not providing any, and we've been pushed so far to provide any political statement, and we have fought not to fall on that trap. So we're a data tool because we think that change, you know, the road to wisdom comes from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid. And it all starts with data. So without data and information, people will not be able to reach wisdom, right? So it all starts with data. And data by itself doesn't provide a context. So when analyzed, it becomes information. And when information are widely understood, it becomes a collective knowledge. And collective knowledge leads to wisdom. So that's where we find ourselves, just at the bottom of the pyramid, trying to work on data accessibility and the data use and information. So thank you very much, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. All right, folks. We have 10 minutes, and let's do some Q&A here. Let's see if there's someone who hasn't spoken yet. In terms of, have you spoken? Yeah, let's see, hold on, if there's someone who hasn't spoken yet, in terms of questions for these people or some ideas about ways that we can rock advocacy using digital as a tool. Any questions or comments? Okay, here, let's go up in front here. I think that's Dina, right?
My question is to Abet, because I think what you're doing is really amazing. I just have a couple of questions. Do you actually go out of your way to find data related to the impact that sexual harassment has on the economy? We're going to slum areas. You actually, if you do focus groups with women, they'll actually say we do not leave our community because we do not want to be sexually harassed. On the other side of the coin, if you ask a lot of women in Egypt these days, has your social life become limited because of the threat of sexual harassment? They'll say yes. So the impact that that has had on the economy, I'm sure in numbers, is quite huge, and nobody's actually documenting. I'm only saying this because I think what you're doing will only be successful if you're able to scale up in a way that will allow you to lead to serious changes in policy, and that only happens when these kind of numbers are shoved in people's faces. It's not just about behavioral change, it's that if this doesn't change, this is not good for our economy, this is not good for our society, this is not good. So I think you should join forces with Ramzi and create some kind of a visual that actually documents the impact that sexual harassment has had on the everyday lives of people, the impact that that has had on restaurants and shops, and how it minimizes the ability for women to feel comfortable going out late at night or at any time. And also in jobs. There are a lot of women who won't take jobs if it's at the other side of the city or...
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. We definitely collect this information anecdotally and through our reports, but we haven't quantified it yet, although it's a really, really important thing to discuss. We do talk about things such as, the thing is we're facing another challenge, which is, so a counter movement and actually keeping the woman at home, which is a totally different challenge. And this is more of a social, with the excuse of religion, sort of keeping women at home. So actually telling, we have to be really careful about how to position this as well, because a lot of people these days don't even support the idea of let women freely just do whatever that they want, because even if it impacts the economy, at the end of the day, we have customs that we want to preserve. So there's a totally different set of challenges that we're facing these days, but this is a really, really important point. What we tell people is, when they say things like, why is she going to Tahrir to get harassed? Why is she going to this place or that place to get harassed? We talk about harassment happening in every single place in Egypt, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the street in broad daylight, whether it's in public transportation. And therefore, if ultimately your goal is to keep women at home, well, a third of Egyptian families are run by women. A third of Egyptian families are run by women financially, at least a third. And therefore, there is a massive economical impact on that. Quantified in a more detailed manner, no, but it's a really good point that I'll take up.
That should be visualized. A third? Wow. Yeah. Sure.
Hard. Okay.
Hi, I wanted to ask you about your campaign. A group of people were thinking of doing something similar in Jordan, and one of the things they faced actually fire open on them, because some people accused them of giving a bad image about the country, so tourists are not going to come to Jordan and they will be scared to come, and that we're not doing our country any favor. Two, there was a political aspect of it, and I'm sure you've seen this in Egypt, because some people accused the ones that harass women in protests that they are sent from the government so that women would not participate in protests and eliminate them from this process. And another thing is that the most common thing is that people actually accuse women of subjecting themselves to harassment because of the way they look or the way they dress, and the religious factor plays a role here on how to dress and how to behave or where to go or whatever. So how do you address these issues? How do you talk to these people without pissing them off or making the society angry? You have a conservative society similar to ours.
Okay, well, we try to be really inclusive in the way that we approach the problem. So we don't position ourselves as like a feminist organization, with all due respect to feminist organizations. That's not the point. The point is, with sexual harassment in Egypt, we talk about it as a societal issue overall, and we always try to position it as that. So 50% of our volunteers are men. That to us, in our experience, gives credibility to the issue when we talk about anything, because it doesn't position things as sort of a defensive, it puts us in a defensive spot or this defensive confrontational dialogue between men and women. That's not the point. The point is, it's a social epidemic that needs to be addressed by all. On your point on, I'm not sure how much you want me to respond to this because of the context in which we're discussing this, but
yes, and briefly.
So we can. Do you want to? We can take this offline if you want to discuss the specifics if it's outside of digital. I'm happy to speak to you at the end of this, because I don't want to take away from the time of this forum. But we definitely have ways in which we address every single one of these points.
Other quick questions? Okay, I have a question, again for the audience, for everyone to raise your hand if you have ever organized or been part of some organizing group for any sort of advocacy effort, online advocacy campaign, etc. Any kind. Raise them high, raise them high. Okay, now keep them up. Well, hold on, keep them up, keep them up. Keep your hand up if you had hard targets or some sort of clear method of measuring the success of your campaign? Pull them down if you did not have some sort of clear method for measuring the success. All right, so also about half, it seems. Just quickly, a couple words each. For these campaigns that you guys have been running here, did you have a hard method, yes or no? And if you did, what was it exactly that you were trying to measure? What was the measure? You said, if we got that, then we succeeded, then this campaign succeeded. Or if we didn't reach that number of something, of X, we didn't quite succeed. So just one by one. I mean, Ramzi.
So there's two ways. There's quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative is numbers. We see how many people have shared, viewed, seen. I mean, Nadine showed how 1,000, 1,700. You can see which one went better and which we didn't. And also number-wise, we also try to see how many people have actually used the tools in their campaigns, and it's in a much more active way. Qualitative is more like testimonials, like how they've changed their minds, or people have said, I've used, this is done different. So we actually diligently started measuring, maybe even in newspapers, what words are used differently. Is it terrorist? Is it activist? So the more qualitative word, language, terminology. And in the end, later on, is actually actual campaigns that have reached, where people are set free from jail, where people, the politicians use. So we try to link. But
so in terms of the quantitative, though, did you say, you're talking about shares, likes, change of views, etc. Did you set a hard number? If we get 2,000 likes, this is a success. 2,000, if we got less than that, it wasn't.
No, we didn't set targets.
Okay. That's good. Not. Ahmed, you were gonna?
Yeah, for me it's a little bit different because again, there was it was not like a venture we were seeking, and there was no kind of certain of a roadmap that if we fail to reach this specific step, then we need to do something. It was just do, publish, and go, and it's gonna grow itself. We also weren't kind of dedicated to that. We have all had different things to do, so just throw it out and it's gonna fly. I think what helped us most was the timing, because people would thirst for something like that. And that's what helped us. So we didn't need to invest in any sort of user growth or any sort of things.
Okay.
I talked a little bit already about this, but basically our mission is to end the social acceptability of sexual harassment. To try to really gauge that just as a big bulk is really not going to make it really achievable or tangible. So what we do is we break this down into smaller objectives, and from which we actually create campaigns. So overall, over a set period of time, like for example over a year's time, we measure change in perceptions, we measure actual frequency of harassment, types of harassment, bystander behavior towards harassment, etc. So qualitative and quantitative, just to gauge things around that overall mission. But then, based on every objective, we have sets of campaigns and we have a marketing calendar. So for each of those campaigns, we have targets. So I could be running an online campaign right now that is pushing reporting, for example, is driving reporting harassment to us, because reports allow us to respond to all the stereotypes and excuses on sexual harassment. So for that, we put a set target. It's an ongoing campaign right now, so I don't have results. But we put a target of a certain number of reports that we get online on the back of this campaign. So it's not necessarily, it's going to pool into the overall mission eventually, because it's breaking the silence, it's demystifying all of the things, all of the theories and myths and excuses around harassment and whatnot, but it will eventually pool into this. So for
the
every
answer
campaign,
is yes, you do put hard targets.
Yes.
Okay, great. Nadine?
I would say a little bit, not so much. In terms of numbers we want to reach, we always have targets of this month, 5,000 new people, 10,000. But I think using those statistics and being careful to the changing nature of the internet and Facebook and Twitter and the way user behavior changes radically on those things. One example is Facebook ads, how it's changed, the way pages give content to people. I think there's a constant need for us to be monitoring what's happening so that these numbers make sense. And they should always, as activists, our goal is to change things here, like in real life, with real people. We don't have the resources that the Islamists or the fundamentalists or the sectarian warlords or all these people we're fighting And if you go to Sheikh Asir's Facebook page, for example, how many likes does he have? Like 1 billion. Whereas we have 10,000 and we find it a success, right? So we're not even in the virtual world or in the real world, we have to work a lot harder to be able to really compare. And I think the framework to think about the effectiveness of how your online or offline campaigns are doing is, are you ready, tech-wise, the same way that the Morsi meter sort of clenched a moment, and that was it, right? It was the right moment. That's what activists need to be ready for, right? You need to be set up, you have to have your people. Contact list management is the most important thing, more important than Facebook, more important than Twitter. If you have a good software that's sort of managing who you need to call when something's urgent, who can you talk to, because really our work is based on, can you seize the moment when there's a wave? Can you get on that wave before your enemies get on that wave? Can you do something smart with it? Can you launch something and sort of grab the attention of your not enemies, what are they called? Adversaries.
Definitely, I would like
opponents.
to add something on the top of what Nadine said, just very brief, just affirming what you just said. In the first night, we launched the page and the website and everything. We've got more than 20,000 fans just overnight. And again, there was no effort at all, just people just taking, seeing the chance, seeing the purpose, and just jumping over it. If we were to postpone that for a week, maybe this would have never happened. The kind of thirst and excitement people had to do something like that. So definitely
and if you
seizing
weren't
the right
ready-
opportunity is a key.
And if you weren't friends with the bloggers, if you didn't know the people out there, if you didn't have your networks ready,
Absolutely.
it would have been you alone just tweeting maybe a few retweets. But it's that sort of readiness that I think in the times of peacefulness you prepare for, and then when the opportunity comes, you know what to do exactly.
Definitely.
All right, any questions from the audience? No, we're wrapping up. Hey, thank you guys very much. Thanks again to the panel here. You all are fantastic. Follow up with them after. Keep the conversation going. Thank you all.